When you think about Rosa Parks, a lot of times people kind of minimize her to the event that occurred in 1955. But the truth is that she'd been doing work for racial justice over a decade prior. In 1943, one of the things that she was out in front on was she investigated a gang rape of a woman named Recy Taylor. This occurred in 1944. In Abbeville, Alabama. Recy Taylor was gang raped by 6 white men. One of the men confessed and gave up the other names, but none of them were arrested. And this is the state of not just racial justice, but justice in this country at that time. She went down into Alabama and investigated this. Parks and other civil rights activists organized the Committee for Equal Justice, and particularly around the Recy Taylor case. And the Chicago Defender called it the strongest campaign for equal justice to be seen in a decade. So way before the big explosive stuff that everybody remembers, before Dr. King came onto the scene, she was doing this kind of work, very important work.
And this is all happening during the Second World War. So
Yes.
this is also a period in which black men are fighting in Europe against Nazism, against fascism, against a racially biased version of fascism, and then they're writing home to their wives and to their partners and to their families, and are finding out that this woman's been gang raped, and they're not there to do anything about it. And Rosa Parks is out there investigating this situation. I don't know. I'm just trying to put that in context. Like that's
important context.
That must have been, beyond the victim of the crime and the horrific experience she had to go through, but I can imagine what it is to be fighting in a segregated battalion against a racially based fascism in Europe, and to be maybe getting that in the form of a letter. You won't believe what happened to Recy.
It speaks to all these bigger issues about, the flag and the ways that Black Americans don't fully feel attached to the flag, which is something I'd love to get into later, Jess. But here's what's interesting. So what you said about the military is true and the segregated battalions and all of this. But as I'm reading about Rosa Parks, it said that sometime after 1944, she got a brief job at Maxwell Air Force Base, which is also in Montgomery, Alabama. And the Air Force Base didn't permit racial segregation because it was federal property, according to this history. And so she rode on its integrated trolley. It had an integrated trolley on base, and she said to a biographer later on that she said, quote, "You might just say Maxwell opened my eyes up." Maxwell is the Air Force Base. It showed her, she already knew that she was experiencing a wrong, but Maxwell sort of was a further impetus to say, it's very possible to change this.
She saw the future.
Yeah, she saw the future, exactly.
She got to live in the future for a little bit. Be like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
This works.
Just one more thing. In 1945, despite all the Jim Crow laws, literacy tests, and all of these other anti-Black, voter discrimination, she was able to succeed in registering to vote for the first time. It was her third try in 1945. So this is the type of woman that we're dealing with. And again, 1945 is still a full 10 years before we get to the event, which is the arrest in 1955. 4 days prior to the arrest, she was at a public meeting where a civil rights discussion where the case of Emmit Till was being addressed. And the case had resulted in charges being dropped. And she was particularly pissed off and dismayed and sad because the Emmit Till case had brought huge visibility to the plight of Black people, much further than the efforts of the NAACP. That was one of their goals. Their goals was to get wide national visibility for the crimes, for the numerous crimes that were occurring all over the South and the North, all over the country.
Could we just do a little bit about the Emmit Till case? He was a teenager from the North, right? And he was up visiting family. He was down visiting family in the South. And he maybe didn't understand the expectations in the South and maybe some of the differences or what it might be. I'm not sure. I guess that's part of the story, but I don't know. And right, he throws a compliment at a young white woman.
Sure, allegedly.
allegedly, and they beat him to death, right? Like a mob beats him to death. The moment that stands out for me when I think of the Emmit Till story is that it was going to be a closed casket funeral, and the media was there, and his mom, I might not be getting this right, but his mom basically like opened the casket and said, take a picture of his face. And his face was swollen to like twice its size from the beating. And that was the picture that then ended up being spread around the United States and created kind of a media moment.
Yeah, exactly. It was a big moment. The choice to open the casket, whether it was sort of at that moment or prior to the funeral, whenever, it was a political choice to kind of open up her pain and noticing that this, there was an opportunity to really not sugarcoat this. If you think, you don't understand fully what how things go here, what they did to my son. And the picture is a brutal one of his face just completely, it's a mutilated corpse. And so the people who perpetrated the crime against Emmit Till got off, and so this is 4 days. She finds out about this 4 days before the event. She's on the bus. The Alabama City Code required that all the bus transportation is segregated. The way that looked is that halfway down the bus, around there would be a partition delineated by like a sign. And it was regular practice that when the buses would get more filled, the bus driver would go down and just kind of move the sign further back. Often that would mean that a row of black people, or 2 rows, however many rows the bus driver felt necessary at the time, he would move it over, and those people would have to get up and go. He pushed it back 1 row back that time, and 3 black people got up, and 1 person said no, and her name was Rosa Parks.
That moment for me has always been an interesting one to think about, like, just to think about, like, what was going on in that moment, is that she's just calmly saying, like, no, I'm not going to move. And then I'm picturing, like, did the bus driver lose his mind? Like, did he start screaming at, like, what started happening on the bus? 'Cause, but it would have been kind of this bomb goes off in the theater kind of moments, and just I can't imagine like the social terror that everybody felt in their heart at that moment, white and black, just that like the status quo is being thrown in question by this one woman.
The bus driver was a guy named James Blake, and Blake says, y'all better make it light.
The singer.
James Blake, that's unfortunate. James F. Blake.
Y'all gonna make it light. Why won't you move back? Move back. Move
I'm gonna edit that out. But it's not gonna be a good look for you. So, by Parks' account, Blake said, y'all better make it light on yourselves and let me have those seats. And so 3 of them complied. The Park said, the driver wanted us to stand up, the 4 of us. We didn't move at the beginning, but he says, let me have these seats. And the other 3 people moved, but I didn't. So Parks moved, but she slid closer in. She slid to the window seat. So then James Blake says, why don't you stand up? And Parks responds, I don't think I should have to stand up. It's a powerful assertion, not just about her feeling and the moment, but like, why should I? It's a question about what is going on here.
Well, this is that moment where you say, okay, yeah, that's the law, but like morally justify the law for me. Like what is there morally here?
Exactly.